All right, welcome back to the channel. It has been officially, I think, 2 years since we last uploaded. I hope you guys are enjoying the Clippy. Clippy does not approve of what's going on in the economy, so we are going to talk about it. We're going to do a massive deep dive into all the stuff rattling around in my brain about macroeconomy. This is your source of macroeconomy madness, where we laugh, because if we didn't laugh, we would cry at the sheer depression going on, and it's been a couple years. And what was I talking about before? The future of crypto in 2023. We're talking about SEC stuff. Just in hindsight, like none of this actually mattered at all. Interesting. This channel is doing very, very badly. I mostly blame all of you, not my upload schedule. I blame you. I am losing a lot of subscribers every month, and it is 100% not my fault. Okay, so now that we got all that out of the way, let's talk about macro econ. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on, and a lot of distractions. So first off, the hat is not to cover up early male pattern baldness. It is to cover up the fact that I'm lazy and do not want to get a haircut. So anyways, now that we got that out of the way, serving up the most potent questions up front is, let's talk about macroeconomy. So where the fuck do we start? Okay. Let's start with the most recent events. Charlie Kirk's assassination. May he rest in peace. I feel, I don't even know how you're supposed to feel about now having a family and 2 young kids that won't have a father. Yeah, I don't know. That said, it's going to make you feel something, okay? And it's going to make you feel like it's right versus left still. It's not. This is a class issue. This is rich versus poor. This is a small group of globalists that have been doing way more disgusting shit than this, even not to compare, but on this level of disgustingness for hundreds of years. They probably believe in bloodlines. They believe in, weird stuff with children and all kinds of other stuff that you probably don't even want to know about. And so this is just the latest of like, oh, the Epstein list, now we got this in your face. Or, whatever's about to be released. You had the Maha hearings that happened like, Tuesday, and then Wednesday this happened. So it's like all a little bit too coincidental for my liking. But look to coincidence when you see a railroad just come in and hit you from out of left field. It is always done on purpose, okay? So it is to distract you and to get you to forget about what's going on, the greater picture of what's going on. The greater picture is the Genius Act that was passed is terrifying. And it really points to, remember, like, for my OG conspiracy theorists that have been with us since the beginning, the books that were written in like the 80s and the 70s and maybe even further behind there's a couple. Propaganda stands out. And there's this other book, I can never remember the title, but it like deep dove like the 13 families and, the plan for like, I think back then they were saying it was going to be like 2020 or 2000 that they're going to like roll out this whole digital identity and everyone's going to be binded to a digital synthetic environment that they could like shut off and turn on based on your behavior. Well, they're a little bit behind, but it would appear that they're making rapid steps, and everyone's poster boy Trump that thought was going to save them, which that is a whole discussion that needs to be had at some point. Savior syndrome, where everyone thinks that somebody's going to come and save them. Take a stop, breathe for a second, look around. Is anyone coming to save you from maybe your overwhelming credit card debt, your employment issues, the fact that everything is like a million times too much money? Is Trump saving you from that? Is anyone saving you from that? No. If anything, I actually see what he's doing is ushering this in even faster, which I know is not going to make me any friends. We all thought that it was not going to be like that, and it was like the one last stand, and it was the one last guy that was going to stand up against this stuff. But it does not look to be that way. Genius Act, let's start there. Genius Act is essentially approving stablecoins. So what is the conversation? What is the narrative that you're hearing talked about everywhere from JP Morgan? Let's just call it Jamie Dimon, the Jamie Dimon special, okay? Because it's his now. It's no longer called JP Morgan. It's called Jamie Dimon Incorporated. What is the conversations by him, by the BIS, the IMF, Not Impossible Mission Force, even though great movies. Last one, questionable. Tom Cruise going out on that one. I wish he would have gone out on a more positive note, but we'll set that aside for now. IMF, the International Monetary Fund, not Impossible Mission Force, but what are they all talking about? Are they talking about Bitcoin and blockchain and distributed ledger technology and personal sovereignty and more freedom for you? Or are they talking about stablecoins and tokenization? What are they talking about? They're talking about tokenization, and their vehicle is going to be stablecoins. So the central bank digital currency did not play well with focus groups, aka the public, has fucking hated that. So we just rebranded that under stablecoins. And so the funny thing about stablecoins is as soon as the first domino falls with like America doing it, everyone has to jump onto the new system. And this is where we get into a much broader conversation of new system versus old system. Unless you're living under a rock, you can agree, let's hope, that there has been trillions of dollars missing over, you want to call it the last 20 years, 50 years, since the great financial crisis of 2009 when mortgage-backed securities made the whole system go belly up, and the American people paid $27 trillion to get that done. By the way, it was only $8 trillion for every single family home mortgage that existed at the time, $8 trillion, but we somehow paid $27 trillion and did it with a smile. So congratulations to us on that for taking a big L. For the greater good, of course, just like war. So yeah, that there's a lot of money missing. Trillions of dollars. And my theory, as well as a lot of other people's theories, is that has been now used to prop up an entirely new system, and slowly we're teasing the new pieces of the new system. AI is a piece of the new system. Digital ID is the piece of the new system. Where's the digital ID push, Jay? Real ID. Have you noticed how they're pushing that? Go on the website. It is the craziest thing. I traveled back to the US earlier this year, and you gotta have a real ID, you gotta have a real ID. Go all the way down to the bottom. You got to like click in a bunch of subsections, and you can have every other form of ID that you've ever had. Everything is still fine. You don't need a real ID, but it has stuffed every single DMV with a retarded amount of people that are rushing now to get a real ID because for some reason they should get that instead of a passport. Are you high? Why do you not have a passport? Most Americans do not have a passport. What the fuck is wrong with you? Anyways, I digress. You should probably get a passport, okay? Duh. So if you had a passport, the real ID you don't need. So there's your first big step of a digital ID push. Hold on a second, and we're back. So the next big thing, which we'll talk about in just a second, is you need to look to Asia to what's going on because there's some wild shit going on over there. 86 million bank accounts were just shut down in Vietnam. I'm sure it's nothing. But anyways, old system, new system. So AI is a piece of the new system. Digital ID is a piece of the new system under the guise of real ID, but the tokenization piece is going to bind that together to bring your currency to that, okay? So we're quickly moving away from cash. Now, Trump has gotten rid of the penny, but he's also making other things a standard that you have to pay digitally online for certain things. And we're slowly moving to this. This is the new system. So they're just behind. The game hasn't really changed. Some of the pieces have changed. Some of the players maybe have changed. But the funding is coming from us, you and me. And the goal is still crystal clear. It is a dystopian, most likely, digital frontier of social credit scores and movement being controlled by gates, opening and closing based on behavior patterns, okay? That's where things like Palantir fits in, where they're trying to make an algorithm and figure out, essentially, what is that, the Minority Report model of pre-crime. So there's been other pieces of pre-crime, a fascinating read if you want to go into Whitney Webb stuff. That lady is absolutely insane, and she's put together basically the entire mafioso order from, not the start, but I think mid-1950s she goes back to, maybe earlier. Basically World War II, I think, is where she about starts and picks up her research and talks about the Israel connection and that whole game, as well as the old mafia families and how they're still essentially running business as usual. And how the kid exploitation stuff fits into all that. Wild. The amount of data and names and recall that she spits out is disgusting. I will never be to that level. I had glimpses of that ability before, but it is gone with my old age. So she is great. Catherine Fitz is good. She gets into some stuff that I think most people are just not willing to entertain as an idea or a option, about black budgets and off-world stuff and aliens and underground bases. She gets way off into the weeds where I think most people cannot go. Fascinating. She talks about missing money quite a bit too, and she's got a lot of great research on that. So old system, new system is really like the conversation that I'm hearing emerge. And the new system is all of this digital stuff. So it's once again taking the organic material of the earth, taking the very dynamic and balanced nature of everything and getting rid of it for this very fake synthetic bits. And I think Elon Musk is working directly with Trump and everyone else to make this happen faster. Doge actually made this happen faster, believe it or not, for all the good that it maybe attempted to do. Kind of sped up the process as well by removing a lot of the key people that were working on different reporting pieces that we get in public data, as well as kind of hollowing it all out and getting it all ready to be merged with Palantir, which Palantir has the sweetheart deal to basically merge health records with the IRS data and who knows what else, credit score data. It's going to basically be everything. And up until this point, there's been a siloing of that data. It's all been separated, right? And so you have to have, they were trying to still, I guess, to some degree, respect the privacy of your information and not so freely give it away. Excuse me. I just had 2 double hamburgers back to back. Have you ever done that in your life? No, because I'm built different. So anyway, Palantir has the sweetheart deal on that. And so it seems that the integration of all this is going to be, and Maha fits into this, with the health records and getting that in order. That's going to be whether he knows it or not, RFK Jr. is helping facilitate this as well. My guess is he probably doesn't know, and he probably thinks that this is like greater good type stuff. It just might not be. And all this is theory and speculation and conjecture, of course, and I'm probably completely wrong like always. So don't listen to me. I don't even know why you're still in this video at 12 minutes in. So, Palantir, Real ID, tokenization. There it is. There is how they actually get it done. Now, that all being said, we're going to talk about the digital ID push in Asia in just a second. There will be a time under the sun for a lot of different assets. I don't know if Bitcoin is going to get its time under the sun. I know a lot of people are praying and hoping for a 250K Bitcoin because that's somehow going to solve all their financial problems. It won't. And what got you here won't get you there. So if it does, congratulations. I really hope that you do make serious life change off of that and move off grid and fulfill all your personal sovereignty needs. That said, I don't think it's going to solve that problem for most people, and it's too closely tethered to the stock market now. And so if the stock market is propped up by, 5, 7 AI stocks, okay, I guess it could untether, but, guilty until proven otherwise. And so it is guilty of being tethered directly to financial markets entirely, the U.S. stock market. And that means that FOMAC meetings affect it and all this other silly shit that never used to affect it does. So I'm hoping Bitcoin gets its time under the sun. I don't really know. It kind of looks like this whole thing is just being propped up, and then they tickle a stabilization act, and they tickle these things to just keep pumping the price up higher, which essentially is just bailing out the early nerd founders and investors that are bagged up still in this bad boy with billions of dollars. Because the mining side is a mess, the energy effectiveness of it is a mess, and so yeah, it's kind of weird that it's going to survive through this, and then if that doesn't take it out, then quantum computing will, which I think quantum computing is going to be a piece of the new system. So I don't really know what that means for Bitcoin, even though I hold a bunch still and am hoping that that people get out of it what they want. Now, there's going to be time under the sun for gold too, because during this whole chaos period, which it's unfortunate that this has to happen, but there's always going to be chaos. There's always going to be more losers than winners. There's always going to be people screaming in the streets. It's just how it goes, man. And that sucks. And I hate admitting that and saying it out loud, but to avoid it and be like, oh, not this time, is a bit silly. So people are going to do what people are going to do. And unless there's a dramatic shift in consciousness, I really don't see them acting any differently. That being said, is gold could see these numbers that you see. I mean, gold bugs have been sitting around on this it's like it used to be 10,000, but now gold bugs are like 20 to 40,000. So it could very easily do that in like the span of like a week at the peak of the hysteria as the collapse is happening. But once the bailout mechanism is proposed publicly, the gold run stops. You know that, right? because that's how it's gone every other time. And so if we're just going off of history, I'm sorry, but it's not, gold is going to run as they roll out, let's say the stablecoin tokenization is the solution. It's not going to keep running after that. That'll be the top for it. Now, congratulations to people who've been holding gold for 17 generations, and they finally get to cash in on it. They bought it at a penny, and now they're going to get to sell it at, let's say, maybe $40,000. I still think Bitcoin would have been probably a better move, but hey, whatever, who cares, right? Have a little bit of everything, and then you're always winning, I think. So that's going to have its time under the sun. What else? The mess that we're in now is that what most people don't realize is that the entire economy for like the last 2+ years has been propped up by illegal aliens. Yikes. Because as soon as Trump came in and the deportations are not high, but the self-deportations are through the roof because everyone knew what was coming. And so all he has to do is keep like publicizing an ICE raid like once a week. And there's a bunch of other channels on YouTube and stuff now syndicating that, a bunch of talking heads now syndicating that. So they just have to now like promote the fact of deportations, and everyone's just going to continue to self-deport. So now that that's happened, it's kind of interesting to see that the immediate result, what do we like, maybe let's call it 3-4 months in, is Tricolor, which is a subprime auto leasing lender, whatever, had a bunch of subprime junk on their books. It turns out was actually partially being funded by an NGO that was giving illegal aliens cash to buy cars. Another thing that illegal aliens were propping up, I don't know if you noticed, but they propped up the whole rental industry. Housing rentals has been propped up, I feel, mostly by illegal aliens, and probably some other markets and niches that we haven't figured out yet. But they pumped who knows how much, billions, into NGOs that then fed the 20+ million illegal immigrants over the last, 4 or 5 years, which that was good for Biden economics because that's why, he kept that going. So that was to keep the, economy going, and obviously serving many, many other purposes, right? Destabilizing America, destabilizing the nuclear family, furthering push the right versus left narrative, all of these things, right? Which Israel, I'm sure, is sitting back laughing their ass off about all of that. Are they laughing more about that or 9/11? I'm not sure. I guess we'd have to see. Or maybe even World War II. But that's a piece that I don't see people talking about. Let's talk about the COVID vaccine injuries, right? Like on this video, they're going to have some Wikipedia article linked to many of these words that I'm saying. What'll be the most popular word? Who knows? Will this video get the same traction? Probably not. We still cannot have a public discourse about all the injury and devastation that has caused with the turbo cancers and all the other fallout from that. And I know why we can't have that public discourse is because that falls on the government. That falls on all these corporations. So even if we were to bankrupt the top 5 corporations, these big pharma companies that did it, I still don't think it would be enough to pay reparations for the damages done. So then the government would have to pick up the rest of the bill and the tab, and the government isn't in the business of doing that. They're in the business of making you and convincing you to pay the tab of dumb shit that they consistently do, whether you realize it or not. It all gets washed through taxpayer. Okay, so anyway, that I don't think we're ever going to get real conclusion on. I think they're going to just try and memory hole that thing, even though it's going to be tough. I mean, that's going to be way tougher than, Epstein. We'll just skip that completely. Look at Whitney Webb's stuff. I think her stuff is way better at what I could ever possibly come up with. Epstein and his deep connections to Israel and the whole world. Digital ID push in Asia. So you need to pay attention to, back in the day, let's take a sidestep here, story time. Back in the day when I was first getting into marketing, this is like maybe 07 to 09, I knew that you had to look at porn to see where the revolutionary marketing ideas were coming from. They were coming from there. So all the cutting edge stuff that they were doing with like pop-ups and pop-unders and how they were serving up ads and opt-ins and all this stuff and how they were, doing their video, we were learning from that to do our sales pages and to do our sales funnels. Because back then, a lot of that stuff was still okay. And it wasn't seen through the same lens that it is seen today in terms of the scamminess of, pop-ups and pop-unders, right? Back then, it was still the Wild Wild West. I wasn't doing pop-unders, just to be clear. But I would still look and watch that from a purely scientific standpoint and no pleasure at all. And see what they were doing. So similar is happening now, where what we can look to and learn from is we're seeing a pattern emerge, right? So you need to pay attention to what Asia is doing, because every time there's a Davos or every time there is a I don't even know what the fuck they're calling these, World Economic Forum, Davos, who cares, whatever, where they've got a big thing and all the bankers are promoting it. Those are all happening now almost exclusively in Asia. Have you noticed that? Like Indonesia had one in, I think, 2022. Singapore has them all the time. You know, they're trying to push it into Vietnam, Thailand, et cetera, et cetera. So when those things occur, the topics that are discussed, you need to pay attention to. And the topic that has been discussed since COVID is digital ID. What's fascinating about it is the one that they did in 2022 in Indonesia, everyone agreed. All the countries that were there agreed to do digital ID. But here we are in 2025, wait, it hasn't happened. Oh, but it is slowly, you gotta pay attention. Slowly happening. So the 86 million Thailand bank accounts that were, Vietnamese bank accounts that were purged, which Vietnam did similar, that's why I'm mixing them up. And Indonesia, Singapore, all of them are going to go through, and you're going to see a big nuking of accounts that were inactive. They basically couldn't verify these with biometric data. That's what happened there. The Vietnam situation specifically was that they could not validate the accounts based on biometric data. Let that sink in. So now we are basing bank accounts and being able to use the currency, use a debit card, transact with my money based on biometric data. There's your digital ID right there. So, and I'm seeing in the ASEAN network, right? Go through an airport. It's the exact same. At first, for the longest time, it was just Singapore. And like you could go through Thailand and it was fucking disaster, dude. The immigration process. And granted, it was a pain in the ass. But under the guise of convenience, it has now been synced up. I mean, we're talking in every single country, the same machines, the same process. The flow looks identical in the airport. And all of this is to push the biometric data. They are gathering the biometric data. And all of that is being syndicated and shared across the network. And that's going to be another piece of Palantir or whatever spin up pseudo government agency front they decide to come up with. Okay. And so anyway, all the airports look the same now. And a lot of the processes are getting synced up because we still have a visa agency that operates over there. And I'll tell you what, it's been fascinating to watch the last like 3 years as like rule change, oh, this change, oh, that change. I mean, some of these countries for the first time, Indonesia, rolled out a tax system. They never had personal tax system. We have now, I don't know if you've been paying attention, we've now gotten to witness what a country looks like when they roll out a tax system from the very beginning. You never got to see it in America. I never got to see it in America, but we're getting to see it in another country. And so Indonesia is fascinating to pay attention to, especially because they're going to be a huge player in this. Now that everyone's, abandoning China, who's going to be the big player in Asia? You've got Singapore, which is pretty neutral, but not big enough. And then you've got Thailand and Cambodia, but they're kind of already at war with each other, constantly in and out. So who's the other big players over here? Indonesia quietly has a huge demographic of 18 to 25-year-olds. And it's all consumer culture, and it's been programmed with K-pop and all the other retarded stuff that they did in the early 80s and 90s with hip-hop in America. So it's similar programming that they have the advantage here. And I think they're going to try and do similar. I think that they're going to try and make this a big hub, right? Now, the riots and protests that happened recently obviously aren't a good look on that, but corruption stuff is popping up everywhere. Not a day goes by, you turn on YouTube and you see some live cast footage or something of some sort of scandal leading to riots and protests. So that's still happening largely because of the amount of corruption that's occurring in these other countries that the people just aren't willing to put up with. In America, apparently they're just willing to put up with it. It's just weird to me. And so, the conversation gets shut down pretty quick and most people just kind of abandon it and go back to work. Whereas in Asia, they don't. So digital ID push, they're making some very interesting connections between your ability to bank in the country as an insider or outsider, as well as your visa movements, what we got to do. We got to go and show up every 6, 12 months, 2 years, X amount of time to go and give brand new fingerprints, eyeball scan. All these things are connected to the visa that you've got. Again, as an outsider, insiders, and residents and citizens don't have to worry about this, but all the outsiders do. And then that's all being linked up to your bank account. And so some other interesting things that some of these countries are starting to do is if you haven't touched your land and built on it in like 3 years, the government can take your land again. They can take it back. So no ownership. If you let your bank account sit for like 6 months or 12 months, take your bank account. Does it have money in it? Doesn't matter. There's now. And so there's interesting seizing and clamping down things that is occurring. And obviously, like I said, closing down accounts based on biometric data. So there's a slew of things occurring. So in the same way that we used to look to the porn industry to figure out what to do in marketing, you need to be looking at Asia and what's going on over there to see what's coming down the pipe for America and the EU. It's just how it is, okay? So it seems like, and if you check the sentiment with people, it's like there's something off. Everyone kind of feels just weird about what's going on right now. And there's nothing really propping up where we're at economically. You know, job numbers are soft. There's a million things I could talk about. The Buffett indicator is at a higher percentage now than it was at the dot-com bubble, which that's happened before. Okay, cool, we can excuse that. But there's like a laundry list of other shit. And a lot of it I just mentioned in this video. And all that collectively, it's like, this feels interesting. And so, anyway, I think that's my spiel. I think that's everything that I wanted to discuss. The push is still going forward. It's clear. Whether it was delayed or... I actually think that during the lockdowns, during COVID, they were moving around a lot of pieces on the board and you just missed it. You know, having a fake Mexican become the president of Mexico, she's really just Jewish. Stuff like that. The amount of people they probably moved around, assets, otherwise, slaves, who knows what they're doing, right? The amount of things that were moved around during that time, I think, is we're going to look back and be like, whoa, that was substantial. Especially if you look at the rapid rate at which they're now moving under the Trump administration with some of these pieces, like bringing the Treasury together with the Fed. This is not going to give you more freedom. Stable coins are not going to give you more freedom. Tokenization is not going to give you more freedom. It's going to strip it away. It's going to get you more bought into this fractionalization idea of not owning anything. The year's 2035, you own nothing and you love it. Remember the slogan? So how are we getting there? Well, that is part of this like jump from the old system to the new system. I think that's a much easier way to present this instead of a great reset or global meltdown or whatever panic people are pushing. I think this is a softer way to kind of explain that old system, new system, right? And this, you know, what is the average currency? I can't even remember, but it's not long. The average fiat currency, you can look this up on Google. It'll take you 2 seconds. I just can't remember. It's 28, 35, something like that years. Maybe it's 48 years. And it's been so long since I looked at that, but we're way past the expiration date on, you know, fiat currencies as a whole. And again, it's part of, because now if we jump to this more synthetic model, then we're very close to global universal travel. We're very close to, you know, spaceships and intergalactic markets. Like, you can't go from where we are now. We need a baby step, and that baby step is a lot of the AI robotic slop that you're hearing discussed now, right? We're gonna go to that and then quickly to this, because they're already way further on, way further ahead technology-wise, and they have been for a long time, and they just slow roll it out. You can see hints of this in everyday life. You know, your smart refrigerator that keeps a grocery list for you, but somehow now is going to start playing ads. All this stuff is integrated in, right? Way too many microchips. We just need to go back to old school refrigerators that lasted 50, 100 years. But yeah, it's integrated everywhere. Your cell phone, a new iPhone every single year, right? This is part of the model, so they can get up more funding, so they can continue to push whatever, you know, because there's this new system that we're going to get into. But you think that's it? That's the last new system? There's always a push for the next thing, while simultaneously feeding all these other buckets like control and greed and blah, 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 right? All those buckets get fed because, again, this is a class war. Not a right versus left, not a white versus black, not a American versus everybody else, nationalistic bullshit. It is a class war, and it always has been. Since you could go back and read about this in Napoleon Hill's writing in 30s, 40s, 20s, 10s, right after all the fires that happened when they reset the last population, okay? You can read about this throughout time. It is always a class war. It is all of us versus a small group of them. But how they win is they get us to fight each other. And that way we don't see that it's just these guys over here, okay? So anyways, my suggestions, because I can't just talk about this and speculate about all this doom and gloom bullshit without having a solution. I actually can't stand channels like that to where they're just like looking at how bad everything is and then that's it, end of video. So having cash on hand, because buying up blood is always a good idea. This is a very basic Warren Buffett philosophy, Charlie Munger philosophy. Anyone who's everyone that's created wealth, whether you like them or not, think they're part of the system and the structure or not, doesn't matter, is taking care of yourself is always number one. What do they tell you on the airplane? Put the mask on you before you put it on somebody else. So I think the same thing here. Make sure you have some dry powder. The issue right now is we're seeing default rates at all-time high. We're seeing credit card debt at all-time high. We're seeing people just choking to death on all of this debt. So if you need to wipe the debt clean and start fresh by doing a bankruptcy, you need to be figuring all that out now, because it'd be better for you to start snowballing and capturing money off to the side rather in some sort of fund, cash fund that you're ready to deploy if and when. You're better off doing that. Also, too, getting into precious metals, if you haven't already, I would be allocating, anywhere between 10 to 15% of yearly income into things like that, cryptocurrencies, the majors, things like that. And again, I think you're a little bit late to the party, but I think you can still make money, because we're either in like the last blow off top phase and then that's it for this cycle. And that at the end of this cycle is also when they're going to reset us into a new system. Or they're going to wait till it's like really, really bad and we're at the depth and the bottom of the recession and then they're going to move us over to the new system. I'm not sure, and I don't really care. Howard Marks talks about this all the time, is you got to figure out where we are in a cycle instead of trying to figure out, well, what do you do and then what do you do and then what do you do and then what do you do? If anything, just try and figure out what's your next move. And your next move should be something. So have some sort of plan as your next move. And then go from there and work off of, probabilities. If this happens, I do this. If this happens, then I do that. If then statements. Work off of if then statements and planning with everything that you do. It's not that difficult. And I don't really know what's going to come out of all this. For so many years, I've been paying attention to this. I mean, fucking way too long, guys. If you've been with me on this channel, way too long. Okay. And there's been, I go in and out of like, you go through different emotional reactions to this stuff, right? You're completely okay with it. You're indifferent towards it. You feel prepared. So you're like, yeah, bring it on. I don't care. You're terrified of it. You're mad at it. I mean, you go through the whole emotional cycle with this stuff on a somewhat regular basis. And I don't know if I'm just like getting older or what, but I think I'm at the point now to where I've done as much planning as I possibly can. I feel shored up in a bunch of areas. Probably not all, because you're never fully covered. I'm good with my skills, my knowledge, my assets, my shit that I've got in my game, that I'm completely okay with whatever comes next, right? And I think that that's important. I think that regardless of how you're feeling right now, however this hits you, is that you've got to come up with your own plan. And ultimately, there's only so much that I can do, because I'm a physical human being. And so much of this is up to God. And the thing that I'm seeing echoed now more than ever is that this is good versus evil. And I know that was kind of like a QAnon echoed thing in the early years when he got into his first term. No, I hate to break your bubble, but QAnon was just an Israeli Mossad thing that they were funneling that side by side to push public narrative that there's like some sort of spiritual connection to Trump to get him into office. So chances are higher that was all a complete fabrication than something else. Could be wrong. Anyway, my point is that the good versus evil scenario or layer of this, I just keep seeing brought up. And so we can't deny that too, that obviously we have to admit our own humaneness in all this. And so there's a lot out of our control, right? And ultimately God wins. Ultimately, this is all up to God. So I mean, maybe that's something else you got to do. Maybe you got to get right with God. It's never too late. You can always ask for forgiveness. You can always ask for direction, strength, put on the armor of God and face new demons and face a new direction that you are terrified of doing. But you can overcome these things and get right with that, so that after this experience, you maybe have a better journey in the afterworld, right? So I don't know if you believe in that sort of thing, or where we're touching on your beliefs versus not beliefs. Doesn't really matter. I think that there's always room for that, right? No matter what. And especially when you're in a fearful situation, you need to ask God for clarity, whoever your God is. Doesn't really matter. Just ask for clarity, ask for strength, ask to see through the veil of what they're attempting to get you to feel, which right now on the back end of the Charlie Kirk stuff, what they're trying to get us to feel is anger against each other. Once again, do not fall for it. Do not fall for it. Take a step back. Get a 30,000 foot view at this, okay? Look at the timing of it. Look at what else big stuff now is quieted down. Look at now how many other things have been like kind of settled and calmed down again in the wake of this, okay? Go from there. But anyways, I've rambled on enough. 34 minutes. Congratulations to us. congratulations to you for sticking around this whole time. Comment below if you got something to say, something to share. I'd love to hear from you. Or if you want to just do it for the algos, this channel is suffering, and I would love to see this video just absolutely explode. And then we just do this. Maybe we just connect up once a year on a video like this, and it keeps the channel alive and keeps the dream alive, right? So anyways, I do have another channel that we talk about slightly different stuff, but still in the realm of making money, preparing, those sorts of things. That is on the community tab. You'll see that. Another channel, but yeah, help out with this one or join that one. I don't know, do what you like, but thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time, whenever that is. Okay, bye.